Hello, my name is Morgan, and for this project, I chose to research the Challenger and Columbia space shuttle disasters. I was drawn to this topic because, as a mechanical engineering student and somebody that works hands on with mechanical systems in the past and currently does right now, I wanted to understand these both really identical tragedies that happened like 17 years apart. And I feel like these events didn't just change NASA, but changed engineering ethics and leadership within companies like NASA and companies that could be a little bit different but have the same kind of disastrous results if things are done bad. That's why I feel personally connected to this topic. I want to dive into a deeper cause of these two accidents. Let's see here. Um, my hypothesis is that NASA's organizational culture, which was shaped by political pressure, schedule demands, and the normalization of risky decision making, really directly contributed to both of these accidents happening, even though they were 17 years apart. In other words, it wasn't just the technical failures of both space shuttles, but it was the culture, communication, and leadership choices that led to the failure of these space shuttles. Let's see. My target audience is really going to be engineers, engineering students, young engineers that just got into the engineering field, policymakers, and people interested in aerospace and the safety industry in general. Really, because how NASA managed both the space shuttle programs and their other programs was completely wrong way you should manage a program like this. This could also be used for people that want to prevent further failures like the Space Shuttle Columbia and Challenger disaster within the space industry. Let's see. My research objective. The response I want from the audience is for them to think differently about engineering responsibility. I want them to think of engineering responsibility instead of like, oh, well, that's just a small problem. I want them to look at something, bring up safety, ignore the small problems, or when they silence engineers that raise these problems, they need to take it a step above just going through the normal system. And that's basically what happened with both of these incidents, is that engineers raised these problems and they got silenced and told, you're just overreacting, that can't possibly happen, or there's nothing we can do about it, or the communication line chain of command just didn't work. No technical failures were brought up to leadership. And I think if future engineers can recognize these warning signs within their own companies or within their own projects, it could really much save lives that don't need to be lost. So next I'm going to list 5 credible sources that I use to support my hypothesis. The first source I am going to use is the Rogers Commission report from 1986. I think this is one of my strongest pieces of evidence because it's a direct official federal investigation into the Challenger disaster and NASA's culture. It really shows that NASA repeatedly ignored the warnings from the Thinkle engineers that made the O-rings along the Challenger. They completely ignored them, even though they called them multiple times and had multiple hearings on the night of Challenger about how cold the temperatures were and that the O-rings wouldn't hold up. And it kind of just shows that it wasn't a technical accident, but a leadership accident at the same time. My second source is the Columbia Accident Investigation Board report from 2003. And it shows that NASA had repeated the same cultural mistakes it did in the Challenger, even though after those mistakes from the Challenger and they implemented new rules and organizational changes, it didn't really affect them. They had not really changed at all. They did a little bit of change here and there, but their culture and their pressure was still the same standing. And this means after Challenger, the same environment was allowed, which allowed risk to be ignored, kept going on. Let's see. My third, oh goodness, holy cow, hold up, sorry. There we go, I can't read it. My third source is Alan McDonald's book, Truth, Lies, and O-Rings. And this book provides a first-hand account into the engineers that dealt with the O-rings on the Challenger launch. His story shows a first-hand account of when he called NASA, when him and another engineer called NASA told them about the O-rings and how they would not hold up in these record low temperatures that they were launching on in 1986. It also showed how the engineers within NASA were pressured, overruled, and even threatened with their job because of delays to the launch schedule. This is direct evidence of this is direct evidence of culture failure inside NASA's decision-making process. All right, here we go. This is fourth is Diane Vaughan's academic study, The Challenger Launch Decision. This introduces the normalcy of deviance and ignoring small little failures, and becoming super comfortable with taking risks, and because problems didn't happen with taking those risks. But over time, until it finally did happen and that risk became a problem, it was too late and they already lost lives to the same decision making. My fifth book was Adam Higginbotham's book Challenger. Uses the new interviews and documents to show how NASA was under a lot of political pressure during the space shuttle program, because they had just gotten, I forgot the amount, I think it was $2 billion worth of funding for these Challenger and Space Columbia and other space shuttles, but yet they couldn't back it up with the reusability, the launching. So they were trying to pressure 24 launches a year with very limited resources. It just wasn't going to happen, really. This book really took in, which is a super key part into showing how much pressure the organization was getting from the government and from Reagan's administration. All five of my sources agree on the same major point, which is the real cause wasn't the technical issue, and it wasn't a mechanical failure. It came from the cultural failures of NASA's organization as a whole. As for where my research goes from here, I still plan on going deeper and comparing both investigation reports. I want to research more about the political pressure from Congress and the White House and how that shaped NASA's decisions. And I want more academic articles and engineering ethics to be researched for myself so I can have a deeper dive in it. Right now, my hypothesis has a really strong support, and every major investigation shows that my hypothesis is lining up with what the investigation reports are saying, that it wasn't just technical failures that led to the Challenger and Columbia disasters, but it was the decision-making processes and how these how communication broke down within the NASA chain of command. Let's see, here we go. Oh, sorry. Based on my final evidence, I expect my final conclusion to be that NASA culture allowed for small risks to be very normal throughout the industry, and that mindset combined with the political pressure and leadership failures made both Challenger and the Columbia disasters basically inevitable. Even though if it wasn't going to be one of those shuttles, it would have been another shuttle or another rocket altogether that could have led to these disasters completely. Thank you for your time. Have a nice day.